The stars were quiet again. It's too quiet. Tali Wren sat on the edge of the observation deck, her eyes staring at the distant lights of the galaxy. Her hands rested on her lap, cold and still. Around her, scientists moved with purpose. Screens blinked, drones hovered. Data flowed like a river. But inside her, there was only stillness. She missed him. Elias had been her closest friend, her research partner, and maybe something more, though neither of them had said the words. 2 years ago, he made the choice to transfer to a distant station. It was near the edge of the galaxy, close to the mysterious zone humans had claimed, but never explained. The Silent Zone, they called it. He had gone there because he believed in something. Tali had stayed behind because she didn't understand. Now she was starting to. Every day since Elias left, she felt a little more lost. She sent messages. Sometimes, but his replies were short, careful, like he was afraid. Or maybe like he was watching something he couldn't explain. She didn't know how to ask. "Do you still think of me?" So instead, she whispered to the stars, hoping they'd carry her question. Today, something strange happened. The Stellar Compact had sent ships into the Silent Zone. No one really believed the old stories about humans. Not anymore. The Elders enchant. Alien species who had once ruled the galaxy had warned again and again, do not challenge humans. But the Compact thought the warning was just old superstition. Humanity is small, they said. Quiet. They haven't moved in years. Their worlds are sealed. They don't fight, they don't speak, they don't lead. They're done. But when the scouts entered the zone, their systems went dark. No attack, no sound, just silence. And the stars began to flicker. Tali sat in the dark of her lab that night. She couldn't sleep. On her screen, she replayed an old message from Elias. It was from months ago. Tali, he had said, "Sometimes I think we got it all wrong. Maybe humans didn't vanish because they were afraid. Maybe they just got tired of proving themselves. Out here, it feels like they're still watching, listening, waiting for us to grow up. I miss the way you always tried to see. Deeper, Tali. I hope you're still doing that." She paused the video and touched the screen gently. Her chest hurt. Not in a sharp way, but in the quiet, aching way that loneliness lives. "I do still try," she whispered.
Wow.
"But without you, it's harder." The next morning, the station received a signal. One of the exploration ships had returned, but empty. All the crew was gone. Not dead. Just missing. Left behind were only notebooks, journals. One strange symbol burned into the control room, a flame inside a circle. No one knew what it meant, but Tali recognized it. Elias once showed her that symbol in a book from Earth. It was the ancient human sign for fire, rebirth, and watching. It was never a threat, only a message. We are awake. She sat alone for hours thinking. Had Elias known this would happen? Was that why his messages were so distant now? Had he seen something out there, something that made him afraid too? Speak? Tali didn't know how to reach him. But she made a decision that day. She downloaded every record of human history she could find. She studied their early wars, their peace treaties, their stories of surviving when all other species gave up. Now she read their literature, listened to their old music, watched recordings of their poets and engineers and explorers. One phrase stayed with her. Hope is our oldest weapon. Tali sent one final message to Elias, just 4 words. I still believe too. She didn't know if it would reach him. Maybe the Silent Zone would swallow it. Maybe he had moved on, but maybe he was still watching, and maybe somewhere out there, a human heart trained in silence, forged in fire, and softened by memory would hear her. The stars above shimmered, and for the first time in months, Tali smiled. She didn't need answers yet. She just needed to believe that humanity hadn't given up, that Elias hadn't given up, that even in the silence something was waiting, watching, hoping too, and that one day they would find each other again. Tali Wren stood by the long glass window of the Stellar Compact science vessel, watching stars drift past like slow-moving fireflies. The ship was quiet. Her lab was quieter. She had been reading old human records for days now. Wars, Poems, letters, strange symbols, and deep thoughts from long ago. It helped her feel closer to Elias, but it didn't stop the ache in her chest. He hadn't replied. Her message, "I still believe too," had been sent days ago. No answer, not even a signal ping. She told herself maybe the signal was blocked, maybe he didn't see it, or maybe he was just busy, but the silence felt personal. Tali walked back to her desk. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She opened the last message Elias had sent her over 3 months ago. "We're close to something here, but it's hard to explain in words. Some days it feels like the station is listening to me. Not spying. Listening. Like it wants to see if we're ready. I wish you were here," she whispered. "I wish I was too." Tali missed the way they used to argue softly, kindly about ancient mysteries and alien myths. She missed the jokes only they understood. Most of all, she missed feeling understood. Now, she just felt far away. Not just from Elias, but from herself that night. Tali had a dream. In the dream, she was standing on a floating bridge made of light. It stretched between 2 stars. On the other side stood a shadow, tall, quiet, gentle. She knew it was Elias. She tried to run to him, but the bridge kept breaking. The stars around her whispered words she couldn't understand. They didn't sound angry, just sad. When she awoke, her eyes were wet. Later that day, something strange happened. A small drone returned to the ship. It had gone into the edge of the silent zone with the others. This one came back. Inside its memory was a single file, not a video, not a map. A voice, a quiet, slow human voice saying just 5 words. "Do you remember who we are?" The room fell silent as it played again. "Do you remember who we are?" The captain thought it was a trick. Some said it was a human AI playing games. Others wanted to ignore it. But Tali, she heard something else in that voice. Loneliness. Like someone reaching out, afraid to hope. She spent hours listening to it over and over. She slowed it down, sped it up, played it backward. Hidden code, no threat, just the question. She whispered to herself, "Yes, I think I do." Because she had been reading human history, she knew. Humans were the last to fall, the last to give up, the last to stop hoping. Even when the galaxy turned against them, they stayed kind, they stayed clever. They didn't beg, they didn't scream. They remembered who they were, and now they were asking if anyone else did. Tali opened her journal and wrote, "I want to find you, Elias. I want to stand where you are. I want to show them we're not all blind. We remember. Even if we forgot for a while, we still remember." Didn't know what she would do next. She didn't have a plan. But she knew staying silent would hurt more than speaking. So she sent a second message this time. Not just to Elias, but to the edge of the silent zone. To whoever is listening. "We were foolish, but not all of us are blind. Some of us want to learn. Some of us remember. I remember you. And I miss someone who still walks your halls. Please, if you hear me, tell him I haven't forgotten." A few hours later, her console blinked. Not a message. Just a symbol. The same fire circle from the ancient human books. But this time, it pulsed gently like a heartbeat. She smiled. Just a little, no words, no explanation. But it meant someone had heard. Maybe it was Elias. Maybe it was humanity. Maybe both. But it was hope. And hope was enough for now that night. She didn't dream of broken bridges. She dreamed of stars building new paths. Quiet ones. Bright ones. And at the end of one, someone waited. Someone who still remembered her name. It had been pulsing softly for 2 days. No words, no coordinates, just that ancient human sign fire inside a circle. A signal older than her own species' written history. It didn't blink for help. It didn't threaten. It simply existed. Like a quiet reminder, someone is still here. Tali watched it as she sipped her tea, lukewarm now. She hadn't left her post much. She didn't want to miss anything. Still, the silence made her feel small and alone. She thought of Elias again. Of his last message. Of his voice saying he wished she was there. Why didn't I go with him? She wondered. The science, the mission, the stars, all of that had seemed more important at the time. She thought there would be time to catch up later, time to visit, time to talk, but later kept moving farther away. Now, all she had was a glowing symbol and a memory of his smile. That morning, she tried something new. She wrote a message not as a scientist, not as a researcher, but just as herself. Elias, if this reaches you, I just want you to know, I'm sorry I stayed behind. I was scared of being wrong, of not understanding, of what people would think. But I'm not scared anymore. You were right, and I miss you. She paused, staring at the words. Then she added, if you still think of me. Even just a light in the dark. She sent it into the silent zone, not knowing if it would be seen, not knowing if it would matter. Hours passed. Then a day. Then two, no reply. The symbol stopped pulsing. It vanished. Tally felt something inside her go quiet too. Maybe she had asked too much. Maybe it was too late. Maybe he had changed. Maybe she had. Then late at night, something strange happened. The stars outside the ship began to shift, not move but align. One by one, certain stars began glowing brighter than usual. A formation. Like an arrow made of light. Pointing toward the edge of the silent zone, a voice came through the ship's speakers. Not loud, not commanding, soft, we don't forget. The ones who remember. Tally's heart raced. It wasn't Elias. It wasn't a machine. It sounded collective, as if many voices had joined into one. She stood slowly, unable to speak. The voice continued. You asked for a light in the dark. So here's one. The stars blinked again. And then a new symbol appeared on her screen, not this time, but a candle. Tally smiled, tears forming in her eyes. She knew what she had to do. She went to the ship's captain and asked for clearance. I want to go to the edge of the zone, she said. The captain frowned. You'll be alone out there. I already am, she replied. They argued, but in the end he agreed. One small ship, one scientist, one mission. To follow the stars inside the small vessel, Tally felt strangely calm. She carried no weapons, no demands. Just hope. The ship moved through the dark, guided by the arrow of stars. Days passed. She slept. She dreamed of Elias again. This time, he was building something, a bridge, made of memory, of books and laughter and shared dreams. She stood on one side. He waved at her gently. She woke with a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time, belonging. At last, she reached the boundary. There was no wall, no gate. Just space and. Then suddenly, a change. Her instrument stopped beeping. Her screen went black, then white. Then one line of text appeared. Would you still walk beside him? Tally pressed the reply key. Her answer was simple. Yes, I always wanted to. And then, through the window, she saw it. A station, silent, beautiful, alive, and standing on the dock, a figure tall, familiar, smiling. ELYASTAL. I didn't wait. For permission? She opened the hatch and stepped out onto the dock. The stars were quiet. The universe held its breath. He walked to her, slow and steady. When they finally stood face to face, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to, because the silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of everything they didn't say, and everything they still remembered. Asterisk Tally didn't speak at first. Neither did Elias. They just stood there. In the quiet airlock of the station on the edge of the silent zone, he looked almost the same, tired eyes, soft smile. That gentle calm he always carried like a second skin. But something about him had changed too. He felt heavier, as if he was carrying something important deep inside him. Something too big for words. Tally wanted to say 100 things. That she missed him. That she regretted not coming sooner. That the silence had hurt more than she expected. But her voice wouldn't come out. She didn't know how to start. Elias finally broke the silence. You came. His voice was quiet, careful, but warm. Tally gave a small nod. I wasn't sure. You'd still want me to. He shook his head. Tali, I never stopped wanting that. They both looked down for a moment, then Tali asked, Why did you stop writing? Ilya sighed, Because I was afraid. Not of you, but of what I was becoming, of what I was seeing here, I thought. If I told you too much, you'd think I was losing my mind. Tali's voice was soft. You were never crazy, just brave. Looked at her with grateful eyes. I didn't want to lose you, so I kept quiet. But silence made the distance worse. She nodded. I know. I felt it too. They sat together in a small room filled with strange light. The station hummed, softly as if alive. The walls shimmered now and then, showing stars outside like windows into space. Tali looked around. This place, it doesn't feel human, but it also doesn't feel alien. Ilya smiled slightly. That's because it's both. He explained how the station wasn't just built by humans, it was grown with help from something older, something vast. A network of forgotten technology left behind by the first civilizations. Humans had found it, understood it, prepared it, and then they stopped using it. They didn't want power, Alyas said. They wanted peace.
Alia listened.
Quietly listened quietly. They could have ruled the galaxy, he continued, but instead they chose to wait, to watch, to learn who still remembered them, not for fear, but for understanding. Tali stared at the wall, watching a comet drift past. I always thought humans left the galaxy because they were tired, she said. Ilya shook his head. They didn't leave. They just stopped answering those who weren't listening. She looked at him, and now they're listening again. Tali felt the old ache in her chest begin to fade. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of memory, of meaning, of something deeper than words. She still felt far from Elias in some ways. So much time had passed. So much had changed. But every time he looked at her, she felt a little closer. She wanted to rebuild what they had. Not quickly, not perfectly, but together. Later, Ilya showed her a small garden inside the station. Plants grew in zero gravity, floating gently, glowing. With soft light, the air smelled like green things and warm earth. He handed her a seed capsule. You should plant something, he said. She smiled. I don't know what I'm doing. That's okay, he replied. You'll learn. She placed the capsule into the soil. Light shifted above it, humming quietly. The seed shimmered. Tali watched it, hopeful. Why do humans care about plants so much, she asked. Alyas thought for a moment. Because they're small, fragile. But if you take care of them, they grow. They remember the warmth. It's like us. That night, Tali sat near the observation window, watching stars blink slowly. Ilya sat beside her. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then she whispered, Do you think it's too late? He turned to her. Too late for what? For us. Ilyas reached out and took her hand gently. No, he said, I think. We're right on time. And in the quiet station, at the edge of the galaxy, where human memory waited in the dark, two souls who had once drifted apart finally began to find each other again, met with fireworks, or perfect words, but with soft moments, shared silence, and the smallest kind of hope, the kind that grows, the kind that endures, the kind that makes humans so hard to forget. Tali sat in the station library, a quiet room filled with floating books and glowing screens. The air smelled like old paper and something sweet, maybe the flowers from the indoor garden. She held a datapad in her hands, but she wasn't reading. Her thoughts were somewhere else. Even though she and Ilyas had reunited, there was still a space between them, not physical, not angry, just quiet. They had dinners together, walks through the long halls, small talks about the stars, but the words that really mattered still hadn't been said. Tali wanted to ask, so many things? Did you miss me the way I missed you? Do you still see me the same way? Was it hard for you to be alone here? But every time she looked at him, the words got lost somewhere between her mind and her lips. She was afraid, not of rejection, but of losing the feeling of closeness again. After so much distance, How do you begin again? That night, Ilias was in the garden. Tali watched him through the glass. He knelt beside the seed she had planted. Days ago it had grown, just a little green stem reaching for the warm lights. He touched the soil gently, then looked up at her. He smiled. She smiled back, but the space between them remained. Tali couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling where stars were painted in soft light. She thought of how humans used to write. Letters during long space missions. Letters they never sent. Words meant only for the stars, or for themselves, or for someone who might read them someday. So she picked up her pad and began to write. Dear Elias, I don't know how to say this out loud, so I'm writing it here. When you left, I tried to stay strong. I told myself I didn't need anyone, that I was focused on the mission, that I was fine, but I wasn't. I missed you in the quiet moments. When the lab was empty, when the stars felt too far away. I thought about sending you a message so many times, but I didn't know what to say. Now that I'm here, I still don't. But I want to tell you this. You made the right choice. You followed your heart. You believed in something when others laughed. I admire that more than you'll ever know. I don't know what we are now, or what we could be, but I hope we can begin again. Slowly, kindly, I'm here, if you still want me to be. She saved the letter. Didn't send it, just kept it close. Sometimes humans didn't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes just holding hope was enough. The next morning, Tali returned to the garden. The little plant was taller now. A soft purple bud had formed at the top. She smiled and touched the soil gently. Still growing, she whispered. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Laius. He stood beside her. Quiet then. Slowly he reached into his pocket and handed her something. A folded sheet of paper. She opened it. Her eyes widened. It was a drawing. 2 stars connected by a thin glowing bridge. Below it, he had written, I didn't know how to say it either. She looked up at him. His eyes were soft. I never stopped thinking of you, he said. Tali felt something melt inside her. The distance that had lived between them didn't vanish in a moment, but it shrank just enough for her to take 1 step closer, and he didn't step back. They sat together in the garden that day, side by side talking. Finally, not about the station or the stars, or human myths, but about them. The silence between them had been full of unsaid things. Now, slowly it began to fill with understanding. Later that evening, Tali wrote a new letter in her journal, to the one I missed. We're finding our way back. Not all at once, but we're learning. And I believe that's what makes humans strong. We try. We fall. We try again, even after silence, even after distance. We reach for each other. Always. Asterisk Tali sat alone in the observation room. Outside, stars twinkled softly, distant and cold. Inside, her heart felt heavy with memories she could not reach. The space between her and Ilias felt wider than ever. She thought about the moments they shared, small laughs, quiet talks, hopeful dreams, and how they seemed so far away now. She wanted to say something to close the distance, but the words got stuck inside her throat. The days on the station passed slowly. Ilias worked beside her, but they still kept a gentle distance. It was not because they didn't care. It was because they did. Too much. Sometimes love and friendship feel like fragile stars, bright, but easy to lose if you look away for a moment. Tali remembered the human stories she had read, how humans faced darkness with hope, how they fought fear with kindness, how they never stopped reaching out, even when the road was hard. She wanted to be like that. One evening after a long day, Tali found Ilias sitting quietly near the glowing garden. The little plant they had grown was blooming, a soft purple flower shining in the low light. She sat beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Ilias looked at her and said, Do you remember the first time we met? Tali smiled, surprised. Of course. He laughed softly. I was so nervous. I thought you would think I was foolish. I did, she said, teasing him gently, but only for a moment. They both laughed, the sound filling the empty room like sunlight. Then Ilias grew serious. I've been afraid. Tally's heart skipped. Afraid? Yes. Afraid that I would lose you. Afraid that the silence would break what we had. She reached out and took his hand. Not lost, just paused. He nodded. I want to try again. Start here, she said, squeezing his hand. Start with hope. Tali thought about the human's greatest strength. Their hope. It was not a loud or flashy power. It was quiet, steady, like the slow growing of a seed into a tree. Even when everything seemed lost, humans held on to hope. They believed that tomorrow could be better. That even the darkest nights end with dawn. That was why they survived. Why they still stood watching the stars. Over the next days, Tali and Elias began to build something new, not a perfect friendship or love, but a bridge made of small moments. A shared smile. A look that said, I am here. Quiet word whispered in the night. One day Tali wrote a new message, not for Elias, but for herself. I am stronger than silence. I am brighter than fear. I will reach out. I will hold on, because that is what humans do. She smiled, because hope was alive, and so was she. That night, as the stars burned softly beyond the station walls, Tali looked toward the darkness. She whispered, I'm coming back to you. To us. Somewhere far away but close in heart, Ilias whispered back, I'm here. Of part 6, would you like to continue with part 7? Keeping this hopeful and emotional HFY style? He said. Part 7, write a 800-word story in simple English about someone feeling distant from a person they care about who moved away. The character feels sad and wants to reconnect, but doesn't know how. The story should show their HFY, and HopeChatGPT said, Part 7, Bridges of Light. 800-word story in simple English HFY theme emotional distance, and hope the days on the station grew longer. But Tali no longer felt alone. Ilias had started to open up. His smile was easier now. Their hands found each other more often, like small beacons in the quiet space between them. Yet there was still something unspoken, a question that hung in the air, waiting. We make sure this doesn't happen again, Tali asked one evening, looking at the stars beyond the glass. Ilias took a deep breath. By building bridges. It's not just between us, but between worlds. Between silence and speech. She nodded slowly. Humans are good at building bridges, not just with metal and stone, but with trust and hope. Elias smiled. It's their greatest strength. To reach out, even when they're afraid. Tali felt a spark inside her. She thought of all the stories she had read of humans who crossed oceans and stars, who faced danger and loneliness, but never gave up on each other. Then let's build our bridge, she said softly. Together, they began to repair parts of the station that had long been unused, not just for their mission, but as a symbol. A symbol that even after distance, connection was possible. Worked side by side, sharing stories from their childhoods, laughing at old memories, and dreaming of futures that were still uncertain, but full of hope. One day a message came through the station's comm system. It was from Tali's home planet, a voice she hadn't heard in months. Her mother? Are you safe? The voice asked softly. Tali's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. And I'm learning what it means to hold on, even when people leave. Ilias put a hand on her shoulder. We're not alone. That night, under the light of 1,000 stars, Tali and Ilias stood on the observation deck. The little plant from their garden bloomed brightly between them. Tali whispered, We are like that plant.
Ow.
Fragile but growing. Ilias nodded, strong enough to survive distance. They looked at the stars, feeling small but brave. Tali thought about humans and their quiet strength, their ability to hope, to connect, to rebuild. Even when everything seemed lost, they found a way. She smiled and took Elias's hand. Together, she said. Together, he agreed. And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, 2 hearts began to shine, like stars lighting a path. Forward, built on trust, courage, and the hope that distance could never erase. The days on the station grew longer, but Tali no longer felt alone. Ilyas had started to open up. His smile was easier now. Their hands found each other more often, like small beacons in the quiet space between them. Yet there was still something unspoken, a question that hung in the air, waiting. "How do we make sure this doesn't happen again?" Tali asked one evening, looking at the stars beyond the glass. Ilyas took a deep breath. "By building bridges not just between us, but between worlds. Between silence and speech." She nodded slowly. "Humans are good at building bridges. It's not just with metal and stone, but with trust and hope." Ilyas smiled. "It's their greatest strength to reach out even when they're afraid." Tali felt a spark inside her. She thought of all the stories she had read of humans who crossed oceans and stars, who faced danger and loneliness, but never gave up on each other. Then, "Let's build our bridge," she said softly. Together they began to repair parts of the station that had long been unused, not just for their mission, but as a symbol that even after distance, connection was possible. They worked side by side, sharing stories from their childhoods, laughing at old memories, and dreaming of futures that were still uncertain. But full of hope, one day, a message came through the station's comm system. It was from Tali's home planet, a voice she hadn't heard in months. "Her mother, are you safe?" The voice asked softly. Tali's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered, "and I'm learning what it means to hold on, even when people leave." Ilyas put a hand on her shoulder. "We're not alone." That night, under the light of 1,000 stars, Tali and Ilyas stood on the observation deck. The little plant from their garden bloomed brightly between them. Tali whispered, "We are like that plant, fragile but growing." Ilyas nodded. "Strong enough to survive distance, strong enough to grow again." They looked at the stars, feeling small but brave. Tali thought about humans and their quiet strength, their ability to hope, to connect, to rebuild. Even when everything seemed lost, they found a way. She smiled and took Ilyas's hand. "Together," she said, "together." They agreed. And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, two hearts began to shine like stars lighting. A path forward, built on trust, courage, and the hope that distance could never erase. The station was quiet in the early morning light. Soft beams from distant suns filtered through the windows, touching the walls with a gentle glow. Tali sat by the observation deck, her hand wrapped around Ilyas's. They had come a long way, from silence to words, from distance to closeness. But Tali knew the journey was just beginning. She looked at Ilyas and smiled softly. "We'll ever feel the same as before?" He shook his head gently. "No, and I don't want to. We've changed. We've grown." She nodded. "Maybe that's what makes us human, not staying the same, but learning to be better." Ilyas squeezed her hand. "Better together." The days that followed were full of small moments, shared meals, quiet talks, and laughter that filled the empty corners of the station. Tali felt the weight of loneliness lifting. She still missed the people she left behind, but now she carried something stronger, hope. Hope that even when people move away, even when distance grows, hearts can find their way back. One evening, as the stars blinked like distant fires, Tali and Ilyas planted a new seed in the garden, a symbol of new beginnings. They watched as the soft earth accepted it. Holding promise in its silent grasp, Tali whispered, "No matter how far we travel, there's always a place to call home." Ilyas smiled, and home is where hope lives. That night, Tali wrote a final letter, not to send, but to keep close, to the one I waited for. "Thank you for coming back, for choosing hope over silence, for building bridges when walls seemed easier. We are stronger now because we never gave up. I believe no matter where the stars take us, we will always find a way home." She closed the pad, feeling peace she hadn't known in a long time. The stars outside seemed to shine brighter that night, as if celebrating the quiet victory of two souls reunited. Tali and Ilyas stood together, watching the galaxy stretch endlessly before them. They were far from perfect, but they were human, and that was enough.